planning board meeting for the Great Barrington Planning Board for Thursday, February 23rd. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the planning board will be conducted in person and by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, and those who wish to do so may attend remotely by following the instructions on the agenda. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In addition, pursuant to MGL 7C 30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listings of the agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. And finally, per section 241(1) of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, town residents shall have the right to address a board on any item that requires a vote at a time before a board votes on that item. Such residents will be allowed as much time as the proponents of an item is permitted to have. So we do have, we have our board here. This meeting is being recorded. We will do a roll call. We're all here, but we'll do a roll call attendance in just one moment. For members of the public who are participating remotely, we try and keep an eye on hands raised prior to taking our votes and again at citizen speak time. And our town planner and will unmute you if you've raised your hand at that point in time. So we'll start with attendance. So Malcolm Fick.
I'm here.
Jonathan Hinkin.
Here.
Pedro Paterno.
Here.
Jeremy Ega.
Here.
Jackie King.
Here.
Randy Nelson. We're all present. First item on our agenda are Form A. And does look like we have someone here this evening for Form A. 542 Egremont Road, Great Barrington, a new building lot will not be created.
Yeah, my name is Patrick McColgan. I'm the land surveyor representing the Violent Realty Trust, Elise Abrams. And what she's proposing to do, let me just keep out the way it's over here. What she's looking to do is to create lot one is not a building lot, which is this right here. This is at the end of her property. It goes back that way towards Route 71. Route 71 is way off that way. And this is what we're looking to create, lot number one, not as a building lot. Lot one, not as a building lot. She owns all of that going back towards Route 71. Yeah, she's looking to create that. And what it's going to be doing is being transferred to the abutter to the north. So it's just going to this person here, Pollock, Sean Pollock. It's going right here.
This is great.
Yeah. That's it.
So you have to create this subdivided lot before you can convey it?
Yeah. It's just a division. It's not a subdivision. It's just a division of a parcel of land, right?
But you have to create this.
Legally create it so the description can go in the registry of deeds. It's the only other way to get it in the registry of deeds is the Form A.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Malcolm?
Yeah.
Jonathan?
It's not changing the character of this lot
No,
in terms of its buildability.
This
Nope.
lot being lot
that's
two
why I
for-
showed enough of it to show that it meets the area requirements with and all the rest of it.
Uh-huh.
This doesn't take away from any of that.
It's got very narrow, limited frontage.
It doesn't change any of that.
Right.
That's existing is what it is.
Right.
She actually has the abutting lot, which has more frontage than she needs for.
I see, okay, so,
So just for our secretary who's not here with us tonight. So lot one, the 13.93 acres will be created and conveyed to the landowner to the north
Correct.
Allert. Okay, and lot two will remain with the current owner.
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
And they won't need to use the gravel road to access it.
No.
that is sort of
No.
not germane.
No, it's actually more accessible from his property.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the road is there.
If
Did
you were
you
to
have
walk
any-
down there, you would already say he owns it.
That's how we're gonna move.
Yeah.
Jackie, any?
It's a cornfield, I mean, it's a field.
So
It's part of it.
Okay, so we have a motion to,
Second.
we have a second by Malcolm.
to endorse, sorry. not to-
I'm sorry, to endorse. Yes, thank you. Have a lot of votes. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, Malcolm, what's your vote?
Aye.
Jonathan, your vote?
Aye.
Pedro, your vote?
Aye.
Jeremy, your vote?
Aye.
Randy also votes aye, so it's unanimous.
Been a
Thank
long
you very
time
much.
since we signed this thing.
Yeah. really.
This pen has two ends, to a thicker end and a thinner end, but I think the thicker end is probably done. Hasn't been used-
So there's that
hasn't been used in a while.
in Massachusetts. I
Somebody's got to date
think
it
there was
too.
any.
What?
I thought it was just all.
No.
AKA swamp.
It is, that's the same thing. The little swamp monster should actually be in the swamp.
I was swamp.
You're gonna hold it?
Yeah.
There's a swamp over, there's officially a
There's
swamp
another one.
over in Columbia County. So the town's land.
The one,
It's in-
Because you're all present, you don't need to do roll call votes.
Oh, fabulous.
It may help Kim. But it also,
Kim
helps-
is like shaking her head.
it also helps if there's no votes, you can answer with the.
most important number is here.
I actually think we should have used the brain.
We're actually signing something? It's been so
Do
long.
you remember how to say
I
it?
don't really think I.
I don't think anybody has ever gone to one of those and actually seen and signed it. I don't know.
I don't sign because I'm not out of it.
Don't take it personally.
Somebody's gonna have to date it though.
Alright.
Oh, yeah, actually,
You wanna do it?
totally forgetting,
I mean, I'll do it later if you
I'm
like.
totally forgetting my job here.
223.
I know it very well.
So your birthday?
Oh, my mom's
25th.
Wedding
Wedding anniversary.
Oh, you're here with us.
I know.
You're gonna be,
Just wanted to get that in the record.
all right.
What's that?
I think
Thank
I
you.
also spent my
Thank you.
birthday at a CPC meeting.
Thanks,
this
Patrick.
past year.
Dedication.
Mm.
Dedicated. Okay, great. So moving on, we have the minutes of our last meeting from February 23rd. Do we have a motion to approve as amended and amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm, for seconding. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. I like that. That's so much more efficient. All right, item number 3 on our agenda, site plan review for 965 Main Street, an application from Multicultural Bridge, care of Gwendolyn Van Sant, Executive Director, for a change of use of a portion of an existing mixed-use building at 965 Main Street from storage to educational per section 10.5 of the zoning bylaw.
Question before we begin.
Yes,
Chris, can you point out the section in the bylaw that states that they have to come for site plan?
Section 10.5.1 applicability.
Doesn't say mixed use and it's all exterior. They have no exterior alterations and it's a mixed use building.
Yeah, that's how I read it too.
Okay. I'm sure the applicant, who was represented here tonight by Stan Van Zant, could speak to that. It's my understanding that the building inspector directed them to seek site plan approval.
That is correct.
so you went and talked to him and he said you need a site plan? Let's see, okay. We can do site plan, he's here. Go ahead. Sam.
Actually, I believe Tessa Kelly is joining us remotely and it's just.
She's got her hand raised there,
Yeah,
okay. And Pedro, just to clarify for those listening, under the educational use, is that what you're saying, is it by right?
There's just nowhere in the bylaw that says that what they're doing, which is an interior change of use, requires site plan review. And there's nowhere in
And
the
it's-
states that, that mixed use, the alteration to mixed use building has to come before us for site plan either.
And it is a nonprofit, so it's also
Yeah,
not covered by zoning.
I thought educational use wasn't necessarily covered by zoning. I thought that was by right. I don't think
You,
nonprofit.
you can put a nonprofit school
Anywhere.
anywhere.
A school is an educational use, but
Yeah.
not every nonprofit is an educational use.
But this one is an education area.
Right, you said all nonprofits, that's not the case, Brandy's correct.
You did.
In any case.
It's okay. We're not gonna pick it. Who's right or wrong. I wanted to give some context, so. Ms. Kelly, hi. Good
Hi.
evening.
So,
for joining.
just the portion in the bylaw that I think Ed May was directing us to was 10.5.1, part 1, where it says construction, exterior alteration, or exterior expansion of, and then this is the part, or change of use within a municipal, institutional, commercial, industrial, or multifamily structure. So this is a change of use within a commercial structure. The particular space that we're using was formerly a gym. After that was a storage space. We're looking to change it to educational. So this is just the portion that we're here tonight to ask for your approval on.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here. We'll try and make this as painless as possible. Given that it's an interior renovation and there's no exterior changes, and most of our site plan criteria deal with exterior changes. We will go through 10.5.1 and 10.5. Do you want to just explain the use and what you expect as far as, I think exterior things like parking, and if you're going to add any lighting or anything like that?
Yeah, we're not planning to add any lighting. This particular building was selected because of its proximity to the racetrack, where there are some fields currently being used by Bridge Youth for farming. Bridge has a van that they use to transport teens as well as immigrants to their adult educational programming, which they will use to and from the site. There are a total of 25 parking spots on the site now, 13 of which are already accounted for through the bylaws, the calculations for residential, office, and retail, leaving 12 remaining spots, which Bridge is confident is sufficient for the adult educational programming that they will be doing in the space. And again, no changes to the exterior at all. It's just the change of use within the commercial structure.
Okay, great. Does anyone need to see the site plan? Is
The
everyone
site plan.
familiar with the site?
I drove by and I was just wondering, where is your front door?
So
I'm
the
sorry. It's in the back.
Yeah.
Because I was looking in the front, okay, how are you squeezing a third door? Okay, so it's around, I drove around back. so,
Yeah.
there's a set of double doors in the back, which is
Well,
the,
there were trucks there today or something, I couldn't. Thank you.
So we don't have a site plan showing parking.
No, do we have a digital copy? Do you want to pull out what was it? I think that's just the plot plan, right?
Yeah, doesn't show any parking.
we didn't draw a parking plan just because the bylaws don't have any specific parking requirements for an educational use. So,
It's true, yeah.
yeah.
So that's our room.
Well, and this sort of reminds me of the case of Toon Street when they moved to a location where they had really large parking court area, and we got all kind of twisted up about how the parking was being configured. And it was really clear that they had a ton of space for parking. And so in the end, we were just like, you've got a lot of space for parking. There's no need to belabor it by trying to pick where you're parking. So I think this is somewhat similar
Mhm.
in terms of the additional gravel space. Do you intend to provide a handicap accessible space?
Sam, are you aware in the front of the building if spaces are demarcated at all?
I believe there is one marked as a handicap spot, but the parking is all gravel currently, so. But, and it's all sort of on one level, but certainly we could look into that. If there was an additional.
I'm just wondering if with your clientele, if that would be important for you to have an accessible thing. I mean, 1 per 25 is,
Yeah,
and you've got 25.
yeah.
Usually it's at least one.
Yeah, I think we would mark one right next to the door.
Yeah.
And there's space for that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
No.
Nobody has any questions?
I asked my one.
You asked your one question about access. So adequate sewer and water as far as it's on town sewer and water, right?
It is.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And is this in the Route 7 landscape requirements?
It is.
But there's no exterior change.
Yeah, no,
right?
sure.
Is that
It
what
was a trigger by site plan review.
and that was triggered by site plan
I
review?
hope not.
Which I think is questionable whether or not we need to be here, because commercial building is one thing, and it's not defined in our bylaw. And the mixed use definition perfectly defines what this building is.
Mixed use is the only thing that's not listed here as part of the,
Well, maybe that's,
The difficult, I think there's difficulty practically meeting the requirement of section 6.2.7 requires trees on Route 7 because the building itself is probably non-conforming to the front line. Is that right, Sam?
I believe that is correct.
So there's really no room to plant the trees. I think
Mhm.
that literal enforcement of that is impossible.
so can we waive that requirement?
I think it's practically. You have to.
Special permit. And there's no change to the exterior or anything.
Really? Is that how it was written, Malcolm?
special permit, the DES.
Special permit. That seems wild.
Well, maybe we should
change that.
maybe we should change that one.
I mean, we want trees, obviously, but it probably needs to be some other. What's that?
We have a lot of trees in the back.
Yeah, how about that?
My follow-up is about, could you put a tree between the two buildings?
Maybe since the property goes all the way to the river, you could make that the travel way.
No,
River is the travel way.
this one exemption.
Why don't we just pass site plan review? Seems like the easiest thing to do.
I hear you, but
Send it back to Ed because educational nonprofit.
Because multi-use isn't one of the things listed in the 10.5.1.
Oh, that's interesting. He was thinking it was, I see. So in your mind, in 10.5.1.1, rather than seeing this as a commercial structure, you read this as a mixed use structure, which is not included in that point.
Yep, that's what I
you
said.
have residential upstairs, right? And
Correct.
commercial downstairs, so that would be mixed
Interesting, yeah.
use.
Yeah.
It's not municipal, it's not institutional, it's not commercial, it's not industrial, it's not multifamily.
I say, given that this is the building, I mean, a mixed use building, I'll make a motion to waive site plan review.
I
I
don't
think
know
the
that we
proper
can
motion,
do that.
based on what the board is saying, is to, the motion would be that the board is of the opinion that site plan review is not required here, and the building inspector can move forward with the building permit without site plan approval.
I think that is better, not just to wait.
That works for me, so moved.
Second.
Wait, okay, so we have, Kim, did you get that? Sort of, okay. Okay. Everybody understand that? The board is of the opinion that site plan review is not
Yes.
required, and we're all
I
heard,
mean, we have to give them a check back.
building inspecting, yeah.
Oh.
But did we just have it? Okay, so we have a motion, a second, do we have further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Really appreciate it.
That was a good one.
You really should know that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're really excited.
Landscape
That's
without
a difficult-
special permit.
Well, I gotta say that. I gotta say that.
You're all set.
Gallery.
Is it clear?
Anything else?
Throwing it back.
Okay, our next item is a special permit recommendation for 352 Main Street, recommendation to the select board on the special permit application from St. James Place, Inc., care of White Engineering, Inc., to permit the construction of electronic marquee sign in the Village Center Overlay District at 352 Main Street, Great Barrington, for sections 9.6 and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. It looks like we have Mr. White here joining us virtually. Hi, Brent.
We begin, Brandon, I have to recuse myself. Do I have to sit in the gallery?
Yes, please. All right, so Pedro is recusing himself.
I have a question
Yes.
on this. I don't see any place in the bylaw that indicates that this needs a special permit. It needs a special sign permit. And that's, I don't know why it needs a permit. in
It's
the
an
VCOD.
exterior change in VCOD.
It's not changing the exterior of the building. It's adding a sign.
So we've never considered adding a sign, freestanding sign, change to the building.
Okay, hold on.
It's not on the building. It's
So,
freestanding.
okay, so Chris, are you able to tee this up? Because we know that there's a special permit required by the planning board for the sign.
Good sign, exactly.
And that is, I think, fairly clear in the sign bylaw, which is not in the zoning bylaw, right? And then there is a VCOD special permit required.
I don't think that.
That is what we're here tonight to review, is what I believe the applicant and building inspector have discussed this. Building inspector has suggested that the Village Center Overlay District special permit is required. They've applied for that special permit in addition to the marquee sign permit that the planning board will hear later in March. In this case, and the applicant, when he gives you an overview, may be able to tell you more specifically, but I would guess that the building inspector views the construction of a sign this size as construction of a structure, and therefore subject to
It's not a structure.
Village Center Overlay District applicability, section 9.6.3. All proposed changes, new construction, and any substantial structural change.
There's no structural change.
Maybe the
It's not a-
applicant has more
it's not-
information as to his discussion. with
Can
the building
we
inspector.
hear the applicant, Jonathan?
Sure.
So go ahead, Brent. You want to frame this up for us, maybe address Mr. Hankins' question?
Sure, no, well, first off, thank you all for having me this evening, and I have to say, when you say Mr. White, I turn to look for my father. With regards to the reason that we're here tonight, I think you well summarized. Obviously, this is a not a straight line permitting process here, and one that had collectively the inspector, Mr. Rembold, and I questioning in terms of the need for the special permit. And I understand just from having attended other meetings of the select board and the planning board here that the commissioner has generally held a conservative view of work that is occurring within the Village Center Overlay District here. I think the marquee is somewhat unique in changing the visual exterior appearance of the property, not necessarily the main church building in and of itself. I know he's made other similar rulings on other buildings that were simply changing storefronts along Main Street here. And frankly, as I laid out in my application to the select board here, I believe we meet all of the requirements of the intent of the Village Center Overlay District, as well as the requirements for the special permits. So in an effort to ensure that we would have a free and clear building permit with no ability for someone to question the right to have that, understanding the building commissioner's perspective on that, we have moved forward with the permitting process of submitting both the Village Center Overlay District special permit application to the select board. The reason we're here this evening tonight is for the planning board and your advisory role to the select board to offer your opinion, and I hope a positive recommendation on that. And then, as stated earlier, On March, just based on the time of our submittal and the ability to notify abutters, we weren't able to have our formal special permit hearing that you all will vote on in March under the sign ordinance, which again, we'll discuss that on the 23rd. I don't want to deliberate that now. I think we made our application clear that we feel we meet the requirements of the marquee section as well. If I may, I'd be happy to share my screen here. St. James
Yeah,
Place
please
put
do.
together a great illustration of, I think, really what this is going to look like and why I believe we are. So again, this is a rendering, but this is obviously the front of St. James Place. Looking to the west, to the right of our sheet is an office building that's between Town Hall. And again, we're simply looking to install this. Actually, the marquee that they purchased was previously at the Clark Art in Williamstown. So you can see the where we intend to place the sign on the property itself, and then off to the left, you can see just some of the different types of events that they would typically be advertising available for the public to come and enjoy at St. James Place here. So really, this is checking a lot of boxes in terms of further expanding the mission of St. James Place and all the not-for-profit entities that they support through having office space in their building. I'll be very honest with you. I've driven by. I saw when they did the substantial renovation in 2017. Until I started working for the Harrises, I wasn't aware of everything that actually happens at St. James Place here. So I really think this is a great opportunity to have a sign that provides public information. Thousands of people drive and walk and cycle past this property every day, and we're hopeful that this will be a great generator of additional foot traffic and more support for the organization and all of the other organizations that they serve as a conduit for. If you like, I'm just happy for the select board ultimately within the bylaw section 9.6.1 for the Village Center Overlay District wants to foster a mix of uses. It wants to encourage greater pedestrian activity as a part of these activities, encourage preservation of historic buildings, encourage economic revitalization, and promote mixed-use buildings. So again, obviously we've already discussed the church, in terms of performance spaces, as well as the former rectory and back there that actually serves as the office for a number of various not-for-profits, as well as the food pantry as well. So really, we have a great number of entities that benefit from St. James Place thriving, and it's our opinion that this marquee is going to be a great catalyst for that. It's a very attractive sign. Obviously, if it was well received at the Clark Art, we expect the same reception in Great Barrington. And in this case here, with regards to your role as a recommendation on a special permit here, I don't know if you want to go through their specific special permit finding criteria or how you wish to handle that. But obviously in the written application, I've given a point-by-point response to items under 9.6.5 within the VCOD, as well as our general summary of comments under 10.4 that all special permits are required to find. You all have that in front of you, but I'm happy to discuss any specific points that you'd like in detail. I'm not sure. I believe Fred and Sally, as well as Haresh Prajeski from St. James Place, were hoping to join us via Zoom. I can't see on my screen if they actually are on the call or not, but I'd certainly open it to them if they are, if they have anything else that they wish to add.
Yeah.
Sally should be able to speak if she would like.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. We're really excited about the opportunity this sign presents to us because we have an extraordinarily rich set of offerings to the community that go unrecognized. And we have an opportunity for those who like one kind of music to go hear another group that plays very similar music. There's just a lot of opportunity. And so we hope very much that you'll look on this favorably. This is an opportunity for us to recycle a sign that really, we believe, fits in a very unobtrusive way next to this large church building. And one of the things that we've struggled with is that people still think it's a church. And that's a problem because they're not going to go to church there anymore. But there are dance concerts, there are plays, there are lectures, as you can see from the wonderful artwork. And it's just a tremendous opportunity. So I guess that's all I have to say about it. But we were very excited to have the opportunity to get our hands on this sign because we think it's very elegant and the pixels are very subdued and it's just tremendously cost effective for us. So that's all the pitch I can make, but I really hope you'll look on it favorably. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, board members, any questions about this? This is just a recommendation. We'll be doing our own special permit review, so.
I just have some questions about the size. I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm
Sure.
and I've looked at the written proposal. Just how tall is the sign and how wide is it? And how far away is it from the church wall itself and the stained glass window? I'm just curious.
Sure. So we are. Let's see
But
here.
maybe in response to that, you could let us know if in the graphic that was provided, if that's scaled in properly, if that.
It is very, very close to where it's shown on our site plan here. I believe we're supposed to be, actually, I can, give me 1 second. I'll measure off my actual. So, which the back of the sign that you can't see in this illustration is approximately 8 feet from the wall of the church. So someone could certainly walk around this entire sign and not be, there's still plenty of a setback away from the exterior of the church wall itself. And the other diagram that I have pulled up, the reason that we submitted this, so the total height of this from the base of the foundation for this unit to the very top of the exterior frame is 12.5 feet tall. We've also identified the interior dimensions of 11 foot and 1/2 inch, and then the 4 foot 2 1/2 inch. And that's what I made reference to the 43, approximately 43.3 square feet. That's the LED display. And the reason we call specific attention to that is when you review your special permit under the marquee requirements, the maximum allowable display area of the LED is 50 square feet. So in this case, we wanted to call attention to the fact that while the overall dimension of the sign exceeds 50 square feet, that the actual illuminated LED display is indeed well beneath that 50 square foot threshold here. And again, compared to the church building, we feel it's the proper place for it here. It doesn't take away from the front prominence of the door itself. It's not obstructing anybody walking on the street or anyone utilizing the driveway to the office building next door or coming in. Anyone. If you were to drive in and pull out of that driveway today, or to do so after the sign, there'd be no change in your ability to safely look to the north or south entering Main Street.
No, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of somebody who's either driving by or walking by and what
Yes.
I can see and what I can't see. And I'm like, it's like the Clark is just great with the graphics. I mean, you can't ask much better. And then look how subdued their graphics are and the light, it goes with the whole building and the gestalt there. And I was just looking here that the proposed images that you have here, are they existing designs or are they just projected designs?
So this is actually a diagram that was prepared back in May of 2022. So I think these were events that were already held at St. James Place and were just used as a purpose of identifying here are the types of events that we already hold at St. James Place. And through the use of this marquee, we'll better be able to inform the public of what's available at the facility, where otherwise, as you mentioned, driving by now, as Sally mentioned, it looks like a church. You would know that all these other great activities are happening and performance art available to the public to come and enjoy.
No, and I was just wondering then, how often do the images change?
So a lot of this we'll get to go over when they come to us.
Do they come to us?
Yeah.
This is concerns because I lived in LA and I saw Sunset Boulevard every day and I saw these electronic signs and then, it's just
how often.
And if it's going to be visually based, image based and not text based, that's one thing, but these are beautiful. But I'm just worried when you say it just can get messy, but that's something for another time to talk about, but that's my concern.
Well, I appreciate you raising the point and we'll certainly have an answer for you on March 23rd.
And I think it's a good point because I think this
when it's gonna be really well done, but I'm more worried about the next one, and so it's good to set the precedent with this
Where's the
one.
Like
next
the
one?
police department.
Well, I don't know where the next one is yet,
The fire
police
department.
department or fire department or someone else, and I'm more
Okay.
concerned with that, so.
All
But I
right,
think your questions.
so do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Board members don't have any other questions, so we'll go to members of the public with questions.
Pedro Pachano from 5 Abbey Hill. I just want to point out to the board that both the village center overlay regulation and special permit regulation states that that signs would require a special permit in the DCOD in particular, if it's a change to a structure, and that your bylaw defines a sign as any device visible from a public place whose design is to convey commercial or non-commercial messages by means of graphic presentation of alphanumeric or pictorial symbols or representation, non-commercial flags or any non-governmental flag displayed from flagpoles or staffs will not be considered signs. So clearly, the bylaw does not recognize a sign as a structure.
Did you look at Mr. Pachano, is it?
Poblano, isn't it?
Did you look up the definition of structures? Which actually includes the word sign in it.
Oh, I see. Very good.
Clever.
Well, that's why you're there, and that's why I'm.
Yeah,
Fred Clark, 388 Park Street. Is this in the historic district? Has it been presented to the historic district commission? Will that take place before it goes before the select board?
Brandy is not a historic district commission jurisdiction.
this is not in the historic district commission.
Correct.
Okay.
This building is not historic.
Thank you.
It's in the National Register District, which is different. Yes, I understand.
We'll have to get a full explanation of that later. All right, any other questions? Are there any questions from participants?
Brent, could you stop your screen share, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Brent.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if there are any members of the public who have a question about this application before we make our motion to make a recommendation, please raise your hand. All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to send a positive recommendation to the select board for their special permit for a freestanding electronic marquee sign in the beach? No,
Just for a change, I would just say for the, what was it?
Special permit.
special
VCOD
permit,
special permit.
VCOD special permit. Okay, that's simpler.
Leave
We
the
have,
sign to another day.
gotcha, okay. Do we have a motion to
so
send a
moved.
positive recommendation for a VCOD?
Do we want to talk about
Special
the
permit.
finding? Well, we don't have to recommend
We
specific
don't,
findings.
because we'll be
because-
making
yeah.
findings, yeah,
Okay.
unless there was something in particular you wanted.
No, there's
to-
nothing negative there.
Okay,
So I'll make that motion.
okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Jeremy will second it. Do we have any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, okay, so it's unanimous and Pedro is recused.
Well, I guess we didn't need to.
No, it's for the special permit, we can't.
We can have.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Brent.
All right,
Thank
thank
you
you.
all.
Bethany.
We'll see you in a month.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You should come with me.
You should run from the board. Run from the board?
You want to turn this off?
The happy crowd tonight, what's up?
We were trying to make the whole meeting approval not required. Almost did it.
Almost.
We're trying,
All right.
Was there some sort of,
It's like
ambiguous.
a
some sort
massive
of communication happening behind my back?
Happened like really bad.
All right, item number 5. We wanted to have a brief discussion following up with our special joint meeting with the select board. To Malcolm's comment before the meeting started, our style of meeting is a little more freeform than the select board.
You take that away.
And we were sort of going down the deliberation rabbit hole and the idea rabbit hole, and we were asked to zip it. So that's fine. So we thought this would be an opportunity to continue that discussion.
We should probably have them come to our meeting the next time.
We could, Steve and I have talked about, we can alternate and they can come, and then if I run the meeting, it runs a slight little bit different. I respect how efficient he is though with everything.
Yeah.
Out of the bigger and better things too.
I think
Get to.
one thing in particular, Peter, you had started to make the point about whether or not we should make a recommendation for next year's CPA around some funding a staffing position to help focus on some housing related issues. And did you want to say more about that? Or just start a conversation about it?
Sure, the idea would be to have either this board or joint recommendations of CPA from us and the select board to use CPA funds to create a position to study housing in town, to do essentially what was done in Nantucket, just to bring a person in that would explore opportunities, explore grant opportunities, explore, look into our bylaws or whatever, just explore opportunities to create housing in town. And I talked to Chris a little bit about it, so I think he needs to weigh in because there are some logistics to that.
Can we give Chris a raise?
I think we would need.
Can we give him another
to
24 hours a day?
Yeah, we
Can't take any more.
Chris, that's really what the issue is.
And-
Put him in the photocopier.
When I left the meeting last with the select board, I was going down the track that Pedro was talking about, but I was thinking specifically, like whenever the two projects that we passed forward that we liked, they presented us and we liked, and we said, go forth and study, and we recommended that town does all the research. And I was thinking, well, my God, that's so much work, and to do it right, and to get the stats that we really like, and to be able, one of the compelling parts of the presentations, whenever the meeting was all the different towns in the Commonwealth that have already tried what we're going to be exploring, or are in the process of trying to do that, or thinking of, or in the state that we are in. Seems like an interesting idea, maybe it'll work. And we are asking all these questions, but these other towns have gone through the same questions and come up with different answers. And yes, they might have different economic systems operating there and history, but we would learn so much from all of those different towns. And I'm thinking, how are we going to get that data? Which is really important, because this is all about running the numbers and how can we make this work. And I just thought, God, just passing thing, go do it town. That's really asking for a lot. So who does that when we get something that is that complicated and really do need numbers?
Yeah.
It's the whole purpose of what I'm proposing, really.
That's another way of saying that, whether it's somebody in town or we have a relationship with somebody else who does it for us, I don't know.
Weren't you asking about if that was
The
part?
local technical assistance grant funds. Yeah,
But ongoing, it should be on.
Well, we have 23 things on the list, 24, because
Oh, yeah,
there's one that,
you were with that group.
and all of them are gonna cost money. And all of them will take time.
Yeah.
Somebody's time to develop, or even to explore, to decide whether it's worthwhile or not. So I think, I think we have a year's worth of solid work here for somebody to look at each one of these initiatives, price them out. Figure out what's the benefit, what's the cost, and because the committee can't do that. Jonathan and Pedro already got burned out.
And of course,
And then the other sides, we can't really put that on staff.
There's
not
too
enough.
much.
There's not enough staff.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that could add up. And if somebody could bring these things together and say, okay, well, here's what it's gonna take. Maybe it will take $100,000 a year, to hire somebody to do it. Or whatever the costs are, but is it worthwhile? We're gonna get some benefit out of it.
And-
That's the,
A corollary to that too is like, all right, with this new tax or way of raising money on sale of property. And let's say we actually succeed in getting a significant amount of funds into the town. How is that money going to be used and who decides how that money is used and on what project? This is like the trust funds or wherever that money goes.
well,
And I was just, I mean, because that's a whole nother level of complexity too, and how that impacts the town and its budgets and everything else. So it seemed like it's a lot of generating extra work.
It is, but I think we should let Chris weigh in and give us his opinion because he's been in this field for
A lifetime.
2.5 decades now and has tapped us into a tremendous amount of resources in his time here in Great Barrington. And there's a really big network out there. I think we have some really specific things we want to tackle, and I think we want to get some analysis and then some actionable items out of it. And so we could probably, develop a job description basically for someone. But Chris, do you want to weigh in terms of what your thoughts are on this proposal and whether or not there are limitations and whether we're the right group to make this request or it should be joined with the select board?
I think that this list that the subcommittees come up with is, as Malcolm said, very long, and it can only be done by hiring somebody to do it. They don't have the existing capacity to do this, not in any way, shape, or form. Volunteers could do it, it'd take much longer, it might not be as efficient, as productive. So I think staff is a good thing to look at. From a practical standpoint, I don't know where, this is what I told Pedro the other day, there's literally nowhere for them to sit. So you might want to think about consultants instead. And in addition to, benefits and sort of the overhead costs of having employees. But all of that can be figured out later. I think that, identifying what the priorities are, maybe what you think the town should be prepared to ask for. I think those are good discussions to have. Whether you have them in joint session with the select board, whether the housing subcommittee is charged with figuring this out. I know the Housing Trust Fund has a number of initiatives that, it wants to try, and those trustees are like you, volunteers. So a funded position could work on all of those things.
I think the issue would be to define a scope and objectives in a manner that we don't lose someone just to a research project, that we really get tangible, actionable items, like you need to change your code to X, or, these parcels have been identified, so I think we probably need to box it in and understand what our objectives are, because I think we're really good at producing a lot of ideas, but we've got to turn them into actionable items.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah,
Our
sure.
audience member?
Yeah, sure.
Would, do you believe, you're chair of the trust?
I am chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Yes.
Would you be in support of signing on to a recommendation?
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, there's a number of towns that have either coordinators or staff. The more dedicated, I think Jeremy talked about this in a previous meeting as well. More dedicated to focusing on housing and housing issues. And yes, we would be more than happy to support such a project.
And how would you feel about supporting something that wasn't necessarily targeted just to affordable housing, but looked at a broad range of housing types? Because I think.
Oh, I wonder if
Housing is fungible in a lot of ways, in that if we can increase the market supply, whether it's designated affordable or not, it affects the market. So yes, absolutely. Housing is housing.
Chris, then I have a question about this. If this is a CPA application for in affordable housing, though, does the position need to be affordable housing position, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could ask CPA to fund part of it, and
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
well, I said CPA funded 50% of it, and 50% of the work would have to be on housing.
on affordable housing, right? Cause it can't be like 120% AMI,
That's
like
right.
working on that. If this position is funded 100% by CPA funds.
Correct. CPA funded position would have to work on CPA eligible housing projects.
Right. Which is, most of these are,
that was gonna be my follow-up question. So in terms of that list,
yeah, I mean, things like, putting together a list so that the landlords and tenants could, find each other. Developing an ADU strategy. Is that necessarily affordable? Or, so that's
I can take some more guidance on it. It's a good question, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And this goes to the point I keep making about AMI. You know, we're handcuffed to this high definition of AMI in this town. That's unrelated to.
but I think
Well, every-
yeah, I was gonna say that
I'm
that
talking-
piece may be on.
Not talking about us, though.
Yeah, but that's imposed on. That's the
I know,
problem,
but,
yeah.
you know, it's.
It's gonna be state law, so we're gonna just have to work within that.
Pedro, was it you who circulated the piece about Florida? And the habitat down there, and they're working with affordable housing, and they got the AMI up to 120.
Yeah.
And you started looking at it and all the housing costs, et cetera, and the community itself, it made total sense. So how would we be able to do that? in
I don't know,
this
it'd be
case?
interesting to explore that, to have somebody explore it. I think that's a.
Sort of apples and oranges.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that
It's
we
not-
can do with zoning that, I mean, we're really only talking about CPA funds and then other sorts of funding that come with that restriction. When we're talking about what we're doing as a town and what, our zoning looks like, we're not handcuffed by
Yeah,
that.
I disagree that it's an apples and oranges thing. In Nantucket, the first initiative that this person took on was finding a way around zoning to allow lots that wouldn't conform to have 2 units on them, to allow them to have 2 units if they're creating affordable housing. So if we're looking at something having to do with some kind of home rule petition or something that changes the way that this town can apportion, say, CPA funds, or that this town can look at something and we can use, I mean, this guy had to go to Boston to lobby it, and he got it approved in Boston. It's an appeal to the zone, to chapter 48A.
Is it a home rule petition or?
Yeah.
No,
Essentially, it was something that allowed them to do, I don't know, and it was voted in the town, and the state then had to approve it, the AG approved it, and I'm not sure how the logistics work, but they had to petition the state to change something that the state is imposing on them.
But it didn't have to do with CPA funds necessarily, right? Because there's a,
No, but let's just say hypothetically, we're exposing how AMI, this has to happen, this is the conversation that has to happen across the country. If we're exposing how AMI is calculated in a town like ours, it makes absolutely no sense.
I think though, I don't disagree with you, and I don't disagree that needs change. But I think with this list being such a broad range of items, we need to move a lot of things forward on all fronts to create more housing opportunities. So something pertaining to lobbying Boston for a change in legislatures, something that's going to take a long time frame, right?
But the impact would be that the AMI would not be 60,000 per family, it would be 120,000 per family.
I'm not arguing that with you at all. I'm just saying that we have to recognize that's got a longer time horizon. And so, can we take a strategy here of advancing on multiple fronts, recognizing that some things are going to have a longer time frame? And so I think we're losing sight of the issue of should we make a CPA application, right? And are there items on that list, Malcolm, that we can think about having a shorter horizon, like something we want to bring to town meeting next year? Could we, well, actually, we couldn't bring anything to town meeting next year, be a 25 town meeting if we got a CPA funded position for 24, right?
Well, we could bring it to the CPA next fall. Which would
Fall
then, yeah, it would be for FY 25, yeah,
For FY 25, so we wouldn't have any actionable items in
Fiscal
20.
25.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look,
But could we not do, propose something if there's a special time meeting in the fall?
We could do, if there's a special town meeting.
potentially.
Yeah.
No, we can't because it has to go through CPA process and then. CPA
No,
has
you,
to be-
You
but
can-
see, but there's nothing to say that CPA you can't make an application to CPA outside of the cycle. There's nothing. You can absolutely do it.
But the question then is, would CPA entertain an off-cycle consideration?
Why not?
That's a good question.
I would.
I'm glad you would. We are counting on you to
I
say
mean,
that.
I mean,
Let's
I
not
get
tell
it.
let's not tell anybody else about the meeting.
I mean, put the application in.
So I think if procedurally, right, there's like, can the subcommittee look at that list and figure out what could be funded under a CPA funded?
See, I wonder if the list is too, like, the list is too broad and too narrow. I really
Wait
think
a
this
minute.
position should be about affordable housing. And it shouldn't be limited to just the items on the list, but it should be more a position to how to create affordable housing. And then we should define that and not be limited by only defining like what parts of the list fit into that.
Well, I mean, if there are
Wait.
other things that should be on the list, let's get them on the list.
Well,
We have to do it all, right? So yes, let's get things on the list, but
because
doesn't,
I mean, I think I think.
can I ask my
Okay, yeah,
question?
yeah, sorry.
Because I need clarification from you, so. The way the CPA is structured, right? It's based on state statute,
Mhm.
right? That says we can set aside these funds for these categories of things, right? And one of those categories is affordable housing.
Mhm.
Do we know, and maybe you or Chris know the answer to this, do we know if it defines affordable housing in accordance with an AMI?
Oh, yeah,
It does, okay,
it has to be 100% or below.
100%.
Is that part of the CPA legislation or is that something you
Okay.
guys?
We were able
So
to,
100%.
So that's
Yeah.
state statute, okay,
State statute.
that's good to know.
and so that's the part I'm not sure. I think that might be hard to home rule, like what you're talking about, just for Great Barrington, where we can do 120 or.
So can we ask Smitty to check on that for us?
What?
I think the whole AMI thing you're.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary for this position.
Yeah, I think.
I think like if we want this position to be more broadly defined as housing, then I think we have to decide. We have to percentage it and like what percentage of that person's work is gonna be affordable housing,
I'm
meaning
afraid-
100% and below.
CPA is not the only funding source.
Yeah, understood, but I'm afraid that the CPC is gonna say, well, how are you going to demonstrate that? Like, what,
No, I don't think so.
Oh, Jesus.
you don't think so?
I hope not. I mean, it's an application that's gonna come from the planning board and hopefully the planning and select board. I mean. If, and then I would expect it's a position that's gonna be under Chris. And so, I mean, I don't know. It seems like there's gonna be a lot of oversight for this position, so.
I think the PPC has been saying that, the Affordable Housing Trust needs to go out and get money somewhere else. But the Affordable Housing Trust is all volunteers.
Yeah.
So I think.
That's why I think this
If you lay it
position,
in front of the CPC, that, hey, we're gonna be able to hire somebody that's gonna be able to help the Affordable Housing Trust. In addition to all these other things, one of the things they're gonna be able to do is find out whether they're grant money and other things that might be available for the Affordable Housing Trust. That would be, I think that would be well received, from what I've.
and that's one thing that I think, that's why I think beyond what we have on the list.
Yeah, I probably reacted badly there. The fact is that if we get somebody in place, then
Yeah.
this list becomes obsolete.
Exactly.
Because this is the.
Yeah.
This is the the priming the pump, if you will.
Mhm.
But this is our rationale for needing somebody.
Mhm.
Now we put
Yeah.
together a list, obviously
It's
we
a
need
huge
somebody.
overwhelming
So
list.
let's get somebody
Yeah.
and then they can take a look at this and say, this is bullshit or.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or, I mean, this is
I'm
garbage.
totally for it, like however we can find the resources. I just want to understand what the boundaries are, because people are gonna ask us questions and.
Well, I don't think we're ready to propose it yet.
Yeah,
I-
but
I-
it sounds like we might want to move in that direction. So if we're not ready to propose it, then the next thing is like, what questions do we need to answer for ourselves to be in a position to put together a kind of coherent proposal that we can put in front of Affordable Housing Trust Fund and get their endorsement, and then the select board and get their endorsement, and then ultimately CPC.
I would recommend taking it back to the housing subcommittee.
Yeah, have you guys kick it
And
around?
then bring it back, because it's not something that we can champion alone. It's
Oh,
something
true.
that we're gonna have to get the select board and the Affordable Housing Trust and others on.
Could I make a suggestion that at your next meeting that you invite the trust and have a discussion with them, because they might have some ideas.
Yeah.
That would go a long way in the application.
Yeah, I've attended the meetings, but I've never interacted with them.
You've attended the
I
meetings?
recommend-
but-
Zoom meetings, the Friday meeting.
Wait, say that one more time. You've attended the meetings?
Listened in, sat in,
Yeah.
zoomed in on the combined meetings.
Mhm.
But I've
you're
never-
The
invited-
subcommittee,
The
the
subcommittee
joint
or the
subcommittee,
Subcommittee, the sub-
Yeah,
housing
okay.
subcommittee.
but you haven't been recognized?
I've been invited, but
Oh, I
I've
see.
attended as a member of the public
Gotcha, okay,
and haven't been recognized.
okay. Well, we can try and spur
Invite.
recognition, but yeah.
I trust.
Let it be on the record that the planning board recognizes. Mr. Clark.
It sounds really nice after multicultural bridge was in here, or actually, I'm sorry, bridge was in here. That the subcommittee will invite trust.
Yes, it does. Okay. Any further discussion on that? Chris, do you have any like guide rails for us or no? Okay.
I have something on this agenda item, though. After Jonathan's, the Globe article that you sent around. So this is a subcommittee thing,
Yeah.
because of the two things that, we were championing. I now have had big second thoughts about both of them.
So for the benefit of those of us here, those two items.
So those two items were, one, an exemption or exemption.
A tax exemption.
Tax exemption, for the creation of year-round affordable housing,
Mhm.
basically. And then the other is a tax, I'm sorry, transfer
Additional
fee,
transfer tax.
an additional transfer fee around the, sale of, property in Great Barrington. And, yeah, I mean, that article really hit home for me. And I think that the things that we've been pursuing in this board about, how to incentivize the creation of affordable housing, I think that I'm much more interested in that now. And so then a position like what we're talking about in how to like, and pursuing like other, revenue streams, that don't come from our real estate taxes or this, or basically increasing the cost of our housing
Mhm.
is what I'm not interested in doing.
Yeah. Affordable housing is gonna cost money.
I know, but
Somebody has to pay for it.
I know, but if it's developers creating it, if we're creating the situation that developers have the opportunity to get a little more development in, and then what they give the town for that is affordable housing. You know, can we be more effective in doing that?
Well, that's a good question, but I think we have to run the numbers.
Yeah, but I think,
Because we
Yeah.
know from the CPC request from Ian Rush, roughly how much it's gonna cost.
but that's one developer. It's one developer, yeah, I don't think that is it, because
So one of the things we got from the public, remember, so when we were talking about the exemption, tax exemption, and so one of the members of the public who has properties in Houstonic was like, oh, I do this anyway, right? And so someone that's already doing that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's necessarily like people need to be quote unquote made whole in order to do affordable housing, meaning they have to become compensated completely in order to do affordable housing. And and I think the same might be true with developers. I mean, already we have, developers that are creating affordable housing in town. And, I don't think it's just because like, this is the way to make money. I mean, I think clearly they're nonprofits,
Yeah.
clearly. And I don't think the people working for them are like, wow, this was like my get rich scheme. This was, they were.
I feel like I'm getting
serving.
mixed signals though, because, like at times we talk about the fact that these developments are bad.
I know, well,
And when we come up with ideas for.
Well, I think
enticing
there's
people to open
other-
their homes for affordable housing.
I think there's other ways to do it though, than what we're talking about. I mean, I'm gonna bring this up in the next meeting we have.
Good.
Next
Well,
subcommittee
we
meeting,
don't have to discuss it.
because, well, no, but I think it's good because Jonathan, when I read that, I was like, and because it does fit in with a lot of conversations I've had with people as well about housing. I mean, I was only thinking about housing around here, but
I mean, even the affordable housing we get, I mean, the CPC money is taxes.
is a tax, yes, yes.
So I mean, any of these things we do.
Yeah.
Even if it's just hiring somebody to keep a list,
Yeah.
it still costs money. It's gonna come out of taxpayers' pockets.
But at least with CPA money, the idea behind that is that we were gonna get a state match, right? We're gonna get a percentage state match
Which
from
is
it,
also
and
tax
so it's,
dollars.
which is also tax
Yeah,
dollars, yes.
to be clear.
To be clear.
Transfer tax dollars, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The state.
I know. I know, so I'm thinking maybe it's already enough.
All right.
Maybe
Well-
we've already hit that well.
I mean, we're a long way from approving either one of those.
No, I know.
And I think there are a lot of question marks. I mean, like on the exemption for the affordable housing. I mean, there's probably affordable housing all over town. So we're gonna get everybody who already has affordable housing in their house.
Is it just
Right.
already a done deal?
Yeah.
And then have we just increased everybody else's
Without
taxes
creating
by?
a single affordable housing.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that still need to be researched, but
yeah,
that's why we need somebody to do the research.
yeah.
So just backing up, so can we use design local technical assistance for some of this? Potentially, that would have to go to BRPC, they would like take some of the scope, right?
I would encourage your reps to BRPC to discuss this with BRPC also,
Yeah,
because,
That's
a
you.
few years ago,
oh, that's Pedro,
regional planning created a shared
Yeah.
economic development program, which we participated in.
right,
And, it's essentially contracted service.
yeah,
There-
Was the previous housing study that was done, was it the
CPA funds.
Sheffield, was that kind of a joint effort like that?
I don't know what the one with Sheffield was done. The most recent one that we did was funded through CPA.
The previous one, there was a joint.
I don't know how that was funded.
Housing
It's been a
studies.
long time.
Okay.
But, there may be. We know that Berkshire Regional Planning, I think it was early in 2022. Issued its housing strategy for Berkshire County. And so it's clearly a big issue for the commission. And it may be something that they'd be interested in funding more community housing work. The shared economic development planning position is shared Great Barrington and 3, 4, 5 other towns. I mean, are the contributions that we all put in through a contract on a yearly basis, it's a contracted service. Essentially funds a position or two at the RPC that does a lot of work for us. And housing may work the same way if there are other towns, and I think there are about 32 other towns in Berkshire County interested in this issue.
yeah,
Maybe
And this-
to increase staff at that level.
so the
Yeah.
strategies here could apply elsewhere. And that's why it would make
Well, I
sense
mean,
potentially for
maybe,
BRPC.
you know, maybe the use of the funds, if we get CPC funds for somebody, is to hire somebody at BRPC to do the work, that it doesn't have to be a full-time position.
Yeah, you can find a contractor, whoever that is,
Yeah.
to do it, or you can find staff person who's here, taking direction directly.
Okay, so as far as actionable items, Malcolm, you're going to take this back to the subcommittee. You'll have a conversation with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And what do we want out of that? Then we want to know which items could be affordable base that maybe are eligible to be funded through CP.
But also we want to discuss more just about the position, right? Not just the items.
I think it can grow into that, right?
But I think that's part of like getting the trust there, because they might have like, this is where we, gets to beyond our capacity as volunteer,
Right. Yeah, definitely. And then when's your next BRPC meeting, Pedro?
They're kind of quarterly, so I'm not sure.
Every other month, it'll be next,
Well,
it's not this month. next
Let's just have a chat.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
as
we don't have to
far
wait
as this board, we'll just wait for a report back. I think it sounds like we're supportive of it
From the committee?
from subcommittee, yeah.
Do you not want to talk about the two items that were proposed for further study?
The tax exemption and the transfer tax?
Mhm.
I wasn't thinking of it, but what are you suggesting?
Did we drop both of them?
Not gonna happen.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I
always
think
thought
we're gonna-
taxing items are really under the purview of the select board. I didn't think we were gonna take these up except potentially in an advisory capacity.
How do you advise without talking about them?
Well,
Well, I mean, we voted to refer them to the staff to study. Let's let the staff study
Yeah.
them and come back with what they have.
so there's a basis for dropping it then.
Yeah.
Not just dropping it.
Can I make one just last comment on this AMI issue? So I've been talking with Tom at the RPC at this AMI issue when the Regional Housing Strategies Committee started meeting, and it didn't make it onto their list of actionable items or list to post on the paper that they published to the county, but I was still talking to Tom about it. And he has made the suggestion that it would go a long way if, if our board were to write a letter to him that he can then show to, state legislators or to other people who are working in doing housing initiatives for the state, because there would be, the municipal body that's talking about it. It's like, no, I haven't yet to really read or find any other municipal body who's really discussing this issue, right? And the issue again is that AMI is really, it's not a one size fits all to every community. Right? The amount of money that people make in this town is completely different than the amount of money that actually is in town. And that affects the way the housing is funded, so that we're basically limiting.
I don't know where you're getting that information though.
It's easy, John. I mean, just figure out, can somebody making 100% AMI afford a house in town?
No, I understand, but you're questioning the legitimacy of the AMI,
I am.
which is presumably calculated exact same way all the way across the country.
I understand,
For
but
every
it doesn't take into
municipality.
consideration, for example, in our town, the money that's coming in from outside that's affecting the real estate market.
But that's
It's
not
affecting the
unique.
real estate market, it's not affecting the AMI though.
Well,
That's my point. Exactly.
Right, so this
And
is
it
a question
should.
of income versus housing costs.
Exactly, that's
Right.
exactly, and that's
Yeah.
what AMI is, or at least it's used to determine the cost of housing. The 30% of what somebody makes in the county is supposed to be a portion to their housing costs. Well, that 30% is not commensurate to the nearly $1 million that somebody bought
Right, so
the
you're,
house next door to
you,
mine.
instead of AMI, you'd like it to be AMHC,
I don't know.
right? Area median housing cost, right?
Could I suggest that it's not really about AMI, because Jonathan's right, it's calculated the same way based on census data across the country. So you're not gonna change how AMI is calculated.
No, that's not
What
what,
you need to do is change what percentage of AMI is eligible for quote unquote affordable housing. Because the discrepancy between housing costs here versus area median income is so great that you need more funds to flow to so-called affordable housing for people who afford housing.
what you said is to sort of.
So it changed the cap.
The cap,
Change the
right,
cap,
I mean,
not
that's
how
one
it's
way of doing
measured.
it, sure, that's
Yeah,
one way,
change the cap.
sure.
not how
That's
it's
a-
measured.
Or use a different number
Because they're-
together, some number that's more directly related to housing costs instead of income.
But, well, but I
But you
think,
still need to measure the, yeah, right.
It's hard because the real estate market is unpredictable.
Yeah, it changes all the time. Plus you have to be able to say, this person here deserves some kind of subsidy for affordable housing. And that has to be based on what? On their income,
but
wealth and income.
Chris, let me ask a question though, in terms of, even if we do something at the local level to say we're looking at a different percent AMI, that's not necessarily going to change what incentives are available from the state as far as financing and things of that nature, right? So we're still up against, if we had CDC come in, they're seeking
State funds.
yeah, they're seeking state funds, and they're still gonna be restricted
Correct.
by a different AMI.
But I think Pedro's point is to, like, if we bring this up,
Building.
Okay,
You can't say different animal.
And frankly,
yeah.
to see what effect this conversation could have on a state level.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, in Boston, it's even worse.
Yeah, one of the things, remember the affordability calculation chart that Chris gave us? On that chart, 30% of 120% of AMI is actually higher than the market rate
For rent.
for rent.
for rents.
Sure.
Yeah, so we can't use 120% as a measure of a subsidy, or we're gonna be subsidizing.
But I think what Pedro's saying is
I
that,
just want, I think my market rates may have been low there,
Okay.
so it may be closer, but your point.
Yeah,
We don't.
but Pedro was talking
Yeah, we
about
don't know what
ownership,
market rates.
right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
you have to-
now looking at what your mortgage would be, right, or your total housing
Your housing
costs,
cost is
Yeah.
not limited to
which
just
is
rental.
much more than mortgage.
It's the ability for people to afford to purchase, afford to rent, whatever it is.
Which is what you want, because in order to change the situation, right? So like Jonathan was saying, is a home is, most reasonable people's biggest asset. And so if you don't own a home, what is your biggest asset, right? And so, meaning you probably have not much.
It's called debt.
Yeah. And so talking about this with, like, how do you relate AMI locally to housing? I think it's in the ownership conversation. Because that's how you really change, that's how you change poverty.
I think my goal is simple, is just to change the funding mechanism. That's it. So that more money can go to more people. Because there's a huge gap. I mean, everybody's talking about it, is quoted this term, missing middle. Everybody's talking about that, and nobody's doing anything about missing middle.
It's getting more talk around it. And I mean, I think construct is moving maybe over. Maybe.
Consider if I could think.
Sure.
I don't know the answer, but AMI is calculated on a total Berkshire County. And the anecdotal story is that North Adams and North County income is less than Lenox, Stockbridge, Great Barrington, Sheffield. And I wonder, it would be worth looking at, the census data exists to parse Berkshire County AMI into a South Berkshire and a North Berkshire AMI, would they be different numbers? Would they be sufficiently different to make a difference? And that might be an easier reach to get to a more defined AMI. I recognize that our market is skewed for money that comes out that isn't earned here.
And Chris, the data that was used in the housing study, the most recent one, was that for the county? The housing data, or was it just Great Barrington? Because it did have the housing study does have specific Great Barrington numbers.
Was that
I don't have
rents?
it in front of me.
Yeah.
All the sources are quoted.
Yeah, I'd have a
It's
lot of
using Census American Community Survey data. For like Great Barrington, then that's Great Barrington. If it's comparing Great Barrington demographics to the HUD determined area median income, the HUD determined area median income is Berkshire County Quote Park. I think Pittsfield excluded. But I think North Adams is in the pool with us, for example. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And when we were, Malcolm, when we were looking at this, like the state, the things that are with the state, that are at the state level, for the transfer fees, that was what they were talking about, like what we were questioning is, could we have like a local things, but the things that are going through the state, it was a Berkshire County, right? It was a Berkshire County. It was some much larger in order to calculate, what was it? Was it housing?
Are you talking about the initiative for the transfer tax that?
Yeah,
putting
like the
through?
one that's before the state.
Yeah,
It
it was pretty flexible.
It was flexible, but it wasn't flexible. It didn't seem like it was flexible, and like you could use two different numbers, and I think one was Berkshire County, not like Great Barrington.
Okay.
And so,
Yeah, I
like
remember.
splitting it in half, I mean, I don't know if that's gonna help for what Pedro was saying, because from at least the example you gave, it would skew us up, right? Like our area mean income would be much, well, actually, I see what you're saying. Our area mean income would jump up, and so then
100% of.
what 100% is would be a lot.
It's a lot more than.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Actually, it does really, it would really help us then.
Okay. Excellent wide-ranging discussion. So what are we getting out of this as far as action items? Because
Well, I'll take this
we're not
back and
taking action.
I'll ask Lee to include an item in the next meeting where we can talk about the staffing issue.
Okay,
How to, what we think we can do to justify it, and also see if we can Fred in on the discussion.
okay. And then Pedro, you want to talk to Tom again?
Yeah. I'll
And,
talk to Tom.
and if Tom, if it would be helpful for us to produce some sort of letter explaining our challenges and that we'd like support from BRPP or to be part of a larger statewide or regional initiative to make changes to state law, I think we'd be happy to put something together.
Okay.
Certainly.
I'll report back.
And
next
then,
meeting.
and then as far as the joint meeting, I assume Chris, staff were directed to look into some of those financial calculations around implications of taxing changes.
I think that was the directive, yes.
Okay, so those were sort of the three major things.
Cool. So will that information come back just to the select board or to a joint meeting?
Oh, I think we should have a joint meeting to follow up. I'll follow up with Steve and tell him, are you interested in hearing that? Do you want to go to a joint meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing research on which they're gonna base whatever they're
Yeah.
proposing.
Okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
no, so I'll check in with Steve on, once that comes back, if we can schedule another joint meeting. Okay. And I apologize, Jonathan, I couldn't read that Boston article because I don't have a Boston Globe subscription and I'm out of.
Oh,
freebies.
are you out of your freedom?
Yeah, and I like have moved all my devices and I've like,
I know, I'm gonna have to subscribe now to the Globe and the Times, and just so I can read all of your.
subscribe to everything. It's
You
ridiculous.
know, the article, when you think about it, it's like the perfect storm, right? The article describes how the state's lost 110,000 people in the last 2 years. Because housing is so expensive. So housing is expensive. It's not being built enough. People are leaving, so innovation and jobs are stagnant. And it's this endless circle of things.
I mean,
One of the things that would take some of the pressure off is if you could get a lot more housing.
Right, because then you'd have
And it
obviously
only
more
sort of
people and
mentioned
more
that.
opportunity, more entrepreneurialism and all that.
well, I mean, I think that that's definitely to a point, but we have work all over the region and southern New Hampshire is growing like crazy. Because they have a very low taxing structure. They're still commutable into Boston, like people live in New Hampshire. And so I don't know where all the 110,000 are going, but it seems like a lot of them are
So
going.
Apparently, they're all
Live free or
going to
die.
Florida.
Right, you can live free or die, and that's what they do. Okay, are we good there with number 5? We go on to board and subcommittee updates, issues and concerns?
Mhm.
Any from you, Mark?
Nothing new.
Jonathan? Pedro?
Oh, I did notice that the special permit that we sent a positive recommendation on requires the design advisory committee to review it.
I think Chris had sent us some notes
And
the
I-
other day and did not think it, DAC was required to review. Was that, did I read that wrong, Chris?
You read that correctly.
It says in special,
The determination, I received from the building inspector, that's all I can say.
I would just like to point out that the design advisory hasn't met in about a year.
Maybe it's time to dissolve it then.
I tried to get you something, but.
I'm happy to dissolve it.
Okay.
But just for argument's sake,
Yes.
because how can the building inspector override the zoning bylaw?
He's interpreting.
Because he's interpreting it.
It specifically says that it has.
Doesn't make any sense. because
Design
it's-
advisory.
It's not reading the same bylaw, because it specifically said it has to go.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
granted, I mean, I'm happy that it's not, I didn't bring it up if you didn't notice, but.
Thank you.
This is a problem, you know, we can't interpret the law.
Thought the word multi-use was an omission by mistake.
It doesn't matter.
I
It's not what the law
This
says.
will be a fruitful discussion.
I mean, it
but
says
I
actually
appreciate
no
you all
special
raising it.
permit can be issued without a finding from the design advisory.
That's what I said.
That's what it says.
I rest my case.
All right,
It said without finding the design.
No
advisory.
special permit shall be issued by the SPGA until the design advisory committee has reviewed the proposed changes and submitted a report to the SPGA.
And that's in the BCAV.
That's in the,
Section.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
9.6.6.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
we'll let the select board worry about
Is
that.
that in the entire BCOD or just in the B division?
Just says, it's in the BCOD. Section 9.6,
It's in the applicability
and it's under procedures.
procedures.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll flag that as an issue and a concern. All right, Chris, do you have a town planners report?
Your next meeting is the 9th. That'll be your zoning amendment public hearing.
Mhm.
So there are the proposals from this board as well as one citizen proposal. I'll prepare some materials for you ahead of time.
Just one?
Correct, just one citizen proposal.
What is this? proposal?
Something to do with the wireless
Oh,
telecommunications
that
bylaw.
That one's fine.
Oh, did you get that? Yeah.
And then to let you know that budget discussions start here on Tuesday night next week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday the following. So if you're interested in following those.
Can we give Kim a raise?
Yeah, is that what you're telling us? That we need to show up and,
We can individually communicate that. Let's see, Director sort of finance and select board.
On the 23rd, as was said before, you have the sign special permit for St. James Place. I'm not sure what else is from you then. But, that's all I have this morning.
Do we're gonna have two zoning hearings, right? Ones that have already been sent, but the ones we sent last week, are those gonna be part of this?
There's
The
one
the-
public hearing with all of the amendments that you have worked on, all of the zoning amendments you have worked on.
And they're all in there?
Yes.
Okay. That'll be a short meeting.
So there's only two if we don't close the meeting. And continue it on because.
I don't know that that's,
An option.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything that's that controversial, so it should be pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you, Chris.
I mean, there's a lot of amendments.
There
that
are,
you
Yeah.
have worked on.
There's
There's more than two.
there's
Yeah.
like 6,
Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't say any of them are hugely controversial, but they're pretty straightforward.
Well, when we'll get the citizens petition beforehand. Yeah, the cases that it references are kind of interesting.
Okay,
So I would,
we'll read it when we get it.
but maybe look up the cases because
So,
there might be something there.
Sounds good, all right?
Motion to adjourn.
No, we have to do citizen speak.
Sorry,
Yes,
citizens.
As this board may know, I am an advocate, for inclusionary zoning. By script or by prescriptive inclusionary zoning, and I think, you know, when we listened to the developer, the Haley Block, him, and he made a really great argument for why mixed income housing makes a better community. I wasn't in favor of the fact that I felt that he wanted to be paid for that. I think that he made a great argument and he should have. My argument is one that developers get a lot of benefits when they build or increase housing in this town. They have a lot of things that are not, they're not charged for. There's a lot of support that that we provide them. And there should be an obligation to pay that back in the form of affordable housing units included in developments. And two, I think that the market has changed significantly. I think that the amount of rents that one can get, desirability of housing units in Great Barrington has changed. I think that there was a time, if we put in inclusionary zoning as a requirement for larger projects, we might be legitimately pushing away developers to another town. I don't think that's the case. I think that we're so desirable at this point that it can be built into the costs and be part of it. And I think the final thing is we can't afford to buy our way out of the housing crisis. We have to be more innovative about that. Other towns, Lenox, for instance, has inclusionary zoning in their right. The project that was on Maple Street would have been a perfect candidate that could have, should have, would have benefited from including affordable housing units, including in the building, rather than having the building simply developed without them. And I don't think that we should have to pay the developers, such as the Mahawi Block developer, who came in and virtually was holding us for ransom to do what he was advocating, affordable housing. I'd like you to consider this again in the future. Thank you.
can I, or do you, go ahead. You have
I was just gonna say that it would be helpful if you could bring me a case study of where that works at the scale that we would build here in town. Because we had inclusionary housing in the B3 here downtown, and nobody bid on it. It's very hard to do, and you can do it in big cities, big projects, 70, 80 units. It works out a lot easier than it does on projects of 20, 25 units. So if you can bring me some, because I'm not convinced that it would work in town.
So that's,
What I would like to pursue is having a type of inclusionary zoning, but that, again,
Incentive or-
as an incentive.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing too is, I'd also like to know where you're getting your idea that were so desirable that developers are just gonna build here, because I don't see a lot of development outside of CDC, and obviously Ian, you know, he's buying these buildings and turning them into market rate, but there's lots of, for example, on Stockbridge Road, there's lots have been on sale there for over 2 years that nobody's really moving on. So I'd like to know, you know, where you're getting that idea. too.
I confess it's anecdotal.
Right,
And right, even,
because I love it here and I think everybody should live here too, you know,
right,
but
and even Sam, right? So it was Ian and Sam for that project and then for proposing the other project, but now Sam's not doing stuff in Great Barrington. He's in Lee trying to create workforce housing, some quick, right? Some,
But
Yeah,
I mean,
that's-
you look at the co-op, the condos at the co-op, the head of Railroad Street and the kind of prices and those units are selling.
but the co-op one was unsuccessful. So that project was originally.
Why was the co-op one not unsuccessful?
Because they
When everything in
planned
town
two
fell
parts.
in, that wasn't.
And it didn't sell fast enough that they even built the
I
second
think you're
phase.
mistaken there. I mean, the condominiums are not, it's not like hotcakes. They take like a while and they
Well, we had
they
a
sold the building out in 2 years.
That's the only.
Well, I know, but it, so the original, well, anyways,
That's fully occupied, or at least fully owned now.
Well, yeah, fully owned.
Well,
Um,
in any case, your point's well taken,
but
that
the retail
we
is,
may or may not have data to support this, that the market's changed, is willing to accept it.
You know, and I think, I also just believe that part of the reason why the town, and I guess you're saying the town gives away a lot, is because we need the development desperately. You know, I would love for the Affordable Housing Trust to come to us and say, you know, the process in town is inhibiting development or something like that. I would love to hear that discussion because I think it's true. Jeremy brought up a developer who's no longer doing business in town because of the process. I know it for a fact.
So we're doing what we can about process, right? Can I ask a question since Fred's here of you, Chris?
I think we're at citizen speak at this point.
Oh, come on.
Citizen dialogue.
but you are a citizen. You are definitely a citizen,
I didn't see his hand go.
unless you're walking really far.
All right.
She's the chair. She can do whatever she wants.
Don't let that go to my head. All right, anybody out in virtual land have a citizen speak comment? Oh,
Jim Stark.
Mr. Stark. Hang on, Mr. Stark, we are allowing you to speak. You should be able to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, I'm unmuted, I think.
We can hear
Correct.
you.
Okay. Several of you have referred to a list, but it doesn't seem to be on the website. And I was wondering if it's proper for you to be discussing a list when it's not available to the public.
So it's the list from our, yeah.
So the select board and the planning board have a subcommittee that is developing ideas to expand housing opportunities in the community. There was a joint meeting last week. Was it last? Yeah, last week.
13.
The 13th.
I'm aware of it. Thank you.
Okay.
That's the list.
So
Okay.
where's the list?
That's the list that was presented and discussed.
Yeah.
There was no list presented here. We were discussing the list that was presented at the joint meeting.
Right, we were,
So is the list in the packet?
it's a reference to the list. The list was in the packet for select board, was it?
I don't think it was.
No? Okay. I don't know.
And is it
Yeah.
on the website of the joint?
The subcommittee web, is
subcommittee?
it on the subcommittee?
That I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll have to look into that to see if it's on the subcommittees.
It wouldn't be here.
Yeah, no, it's not here. It would be something out of the subcommittee, Mr. Stark.
Thank you.
Yep.
The most affordable housing is usually a trailer park.
Okay,
True.
How come you're not doing anything about that?
We don't allow them, Jim.
I know.
but we do have provisions for tiny homes. I
And
need to
the-
do, sorry.
Okay, the abutting towns, I think there are something like 8 abutting towns. How many of them have affordable housing? I mean, I know several of them probably do, but I, for one, would be disinclined to vote for more affordable housing if my tax rate is going to go up. And places like Alford, with their nice low tax rate, are taking advantage of us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen, you had your hand up. Was that the cat or?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see your hand up now. Okay, seeing no further hand raising, we'll adjourn at 7:39. Thank you, Kim. We hope you feel better.